Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I'm in the house, guys. Don't worry. I was actually here just taking my time instead of fumbling through everything, trying to make sure I shared it to the right groups, the right pages, to let everybody else know what's going on. I just left myself in the background. I ended up just leaving myself in the background so that way I could go through, make sure I did the right way without disappointing you guys. Now, I still am sharing it, still trying to figure out the right way to go about this. And hopefully we actually have some intro music on the way for you guys so you guys aren't just sitting there in complete silence. But it's coming. It's just taking some time. We're figuring all of it out over here at Fantasy Intervention. God, man, it's been crazy. It's been absolutely crazy getting all this stuff set up. And honestly, I can't believe we're at where we are today. And I couldn't have done it without my team over there at or Join Our Circle _. Once again, that's at Join Our Circle _ over there on Twitter. I have no idea where I would be without my team. I mean, this team has been absolutely phenomenal from, the editing aspect of things all the way to the quick shots they've been giving you guys, the fantasy six pack, the nature takes, all that stuff has been absolutely amazing from this team. And of course, Bob over there, Bob Gilchrist, has recently joined the team, has been helping me out beyond my wildest dreams when it comes to the actual website aspect of things. So I'm extremely, extremely excited, guys. Make sure you go check out at Join Our Circle _. Once again, that's at Join Our Circle _ over there on Twitter. You guys can also find us at youtube.com/fantasy intervention. So big shout out to the team members over there. What's up, Dynasty Beard? I see you on here. Facebook user, what's up, man? We have a show tonight that's going to be focused on DFS. So if you want to ask this question, we actually have a trade. Trade, drop, or keep actual episode tonight. So make sure you guys tune into that. It's going to happen at 8 o'clock tonight. Just put your game on mute and come check out because the trading line is tomorrow. So make sure you guys come check that out and ask all the questions you possibly can. Now, with that being said, guys, I am going to jump into this DFS episode for tonight. And when I first got into this, right, I'm sitting there and I'm like screaming under, no matter what happens, you have to go for the under. I mean, Kyle Fuller is over there on Thielen. We have Jalen Johnson, who, by the way, has allowed less than 50% completion percentage on Justin Jefferson. The Bears shut down Derrick Henry. On the other side of things, like it's something where the Bears haven't been able to move the ball at all. Robinson's hurt, and I know that you guys hear me rag on Montgomery, but when I sit there and I look at a player, I'm not looking at just the individual player as a whole. I'm looking at the situation. And the situation over there has not been good for David Montgomery. Like, it's not the fact that I hate David Montgomery. Now, do I think that he's actually a great overall receiver? Oh, by the way, hopefully my quality should be getting better. I just realized that I was using my internal mic. Anyways, when it comes to David Montgomery, it's not the fact that he's actually been like a bad player as a whole. Like, I don't think he's absolutely terrible. Now, do I think that he's worth a starter position? Probably not overall. But the main thing is the fact that offense hasn't been able to move the ball. They've been able to keep defenders inside the box to stop the run when they want to, and there hasn't been an offensive line. So losing David Montgomery, even in this matchup, ends up being a 10 times worse scenario for the Chicago Bears, who I don't know what the hell they're going to do at the running back position. Like, I have no idea because, oh man, like it is absolutely brutal with how they run this system and run the organization when it comes to the coaching aspect of things. So with that being said, guys, what I want to bring up is this offense as a whole, and Foles has been at the bottom half in almost every single stat so far this season. It's easier for me to actually talk about the ones that he's not been in the bottom half of rather than try and name the ones that he is in the bottom half of. So these are the stats that he is not in the bottom half of the league so far this season. He's played 6.5 games so far this season. And in 6.5 games, his play action completion percentage is in the top 16th of the league, so barely made that cut. He's had the 12th most air yards, and deep ball attempts, he's 6th most. So that's great. But thing is, as you guys notice, I haven't talked about, yards at all when it comes to the passing game or adjusted yards per attempt. He's 25th overall in passing yards, and adjusted yards per attempt, he's only 29th in. So that's not something that, is very promising when it comes to Nick Foles. Meanwhile, he's actually 11th in dangerous plays and 3rd in interceptable passes. Like, that's brutal. 3rd in interceptable passes, and you've only played 6.5 games? Absolutely terrible. Now, I will say that Foles finally broke the 20-point threshold up against the Titans. It did take 52 passing attempts, but he did still break it. Meanwhile, the Titans are one of the worst teams in the NFL up against the pass, very similar to the Vikings, by the way. But 52 pass attempts to break 20 points is brutal, like absolutely brutal. Now, I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, man, what's going to happen in this game? Because they have the Vikings. The Vikings are beat up. Cameron Dancer's not going to play, so maybe that could open it up. But I thought about it, and I'm like, man, I know what's going to happen. Nagy's going to outcoach himself, right? That's what's going to happen. He's going to call all the wrong plays until, boom, it hit me. I remembered from earlier in the week that he won't be able to do this. Like, he can't outcoach himself this week because he gave the play calling responsibilities over to Bill Lazor. Yes. We might actually have fantasy relevance this week, right? If Bill Lazor can take over as the play caller, right? And he can let Matt Nagy just sit there in the corner and huff and puff all he wants. Oh my God, we could actually have some fantasy relevance. I'm excited for this. Not to mention, the Vikings have allowed 12 touchdowns over the last 4 games to the quarterback position. We already know that Nick Foles has been extremely, extremely frustrated in this offense. I mean, he's sitting there saying, like, they're calling plays, and it sucks for me as a quarterback because I don't know if I have time. I don't know if I have time to actually, execute these plays that they're calling. I don't have enough time back in the pocket. I can't execute a 7-step drop. By the time I take 5 to 7 steps, I'm getting hit. And that is the reality of the situation. With that being said, however, he hasn't been good. Now, like we mentioned, we did talk about, Cameron Dancer being out, which should leave, right? Jones over there on the outside with, Gladney in the slot, and Chris Boyd manning the other side. When we look at it as a whole, pretty much what we're looking at is Darnell Mooney, right, in a phenomenal position to succeed up against Chris Jones. Meanwhile, Chris Boyd should see plenty of Allen Robinson. Gladney should see Anthony Miller. Now, obviously, they move these guys around a lot, so it's not going to be, specific to that position, but that should be the majority of the matchups overall. Now, what I can wait for, I should say, is Darnell Mooney just to crush my soul by getting completely wide open, and Nick Foles just missing him over and over and over and over again. It is brutal, and it hurts my heart. But I will say that Bill Lazor, let's take a stop for a second. Hopefully he calls a little bit more, quarterback-friendly plays in order to get his wide receivers in positions to succeed. I'm assuming that with this game and Bill Lazor and how he likes his short passes, that we could see a very high completion percentage out of Nick Foles while seeing these receivers with a ton of catches this game. But I do want to go back to Foles and when he targets Darnell Mooney. So Nick Foles, right, as of last week, he had 26 quarters. All right. He completed 24 passes on 47 attempts with a 51.1 completion percentage and 262 yards with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions to Darnell Mooney. Once again, that's only 24 completions on 47 attempts with the 51.1 completion percentage on 262 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Meanwhile, Mitch Trubisky, in the 10 quarters that he played, had 7 completions on 8 attempts to Darnell Mooney with an 87.5 completion percentage for 86 yards and a touchdown. If we extrapolate that over the same course of time that Nick Foles played, right, and we talk about the 26 quarters, it would extrapolate to 18 completions on 21 attempts for an 87.5 completion percentage. Meanwhile, he would have 295 yards and 3 touchdowns. So obviously he would be crushing Nick Foles when it comes to targeting Darnell Mooney. If Nick Foles can actually hit Darnell Mooney at any kind of, decent rate, anything above 51.1%, we're talking about an additional probably 30 to 40 yards a game. And probably he might have 3 to 4 more touchdowns so far on the season. It's been incredible. It's been incredible how inaccurate Nick Foles has been, especially when Darnell Mooney is wide open, and it is killing me. So when it comes to Darnell Mooney, he's going to be a very, very good situation this week. And I'm not guaranteeing this because it's Nick Foles, but I'm hoping that this is the breakout week for Darnell Mooney. Chris Jones over there, who, like we talked about, should be covering, runs a 4.72 40. Please, one time, let's give it 3 times, but I'm hoping for at least one time where Darnell Mooney sees man-to-man single coverage up against Chris Jones to where he can just break away and have a massive reception for 60-plus yards. And honestly, I don't think that's just going to happen once. I think it could happen 2 or 3 times as long as Foles can be just semi-accurate. Just get it within a yard of him. He has a good enough catch radius where he can handle that kind of, that kind of loose passing. But, if he's going to overthrow him by 2 or 3 yards like we've been seeing, I mean, there was one where he threw a pass 11 yards away, and I thought it was going to be intentional grounding. So I'm just hoping he can at least be semi-accurate this week, especially since the Vikings don't get a ton of pressure on the quarterback. Now, Allen Robinson, on the other side of things, he's going to see plenty of coverage from Gladney and Boyd, right? I would probably say that he's going to see a little bit more of Chris Boyd than he will Gladney, because I do think they're going to line up Anthony Miller a ton in the slot this upcoming week, especially with some of those tight ends being a little bit backed up in the Bears tight end room. So they do move guys around, so I wouldn't be shocked to see Allen Robinson on Chris Jones, but Allen Robinson is banged up. I will say that with all these defensive backs combined, they're actually all in the bottom 13 so far this season out of, I believe, something along the lines of 96 plus cornerbacks. They are bottom 13 in yards per target allowed. So Robinson, even though he's hurt, he should end up racking up the receptions just like he does. I mean, these cornerbacks all allow at least a 69% completion percentage while in coverage. So I'm assuming that Allen Robinson is still going to be a play. I like him a lot more, however, in cash games over tournaments. Tournaments, I don't know if he actually has the upside this week. Is he still going to put up, 15 fantasy points? Yes, most likely he is. But at his pricing, you're looking for 20 to 25 fantasy points in order for it to be a tournament relevant play. I don't know if that's going to be the case this week. Now, am I still going to play him in tournaments? Absolutely. Absolutely. He's probably going to be in 40% of my tournament lineups. But in every single one, I feel much safer with him in cash. Meanwhile, I'm not playing a whole lot of Anthony Miller. Anthony Miller, for me, he's a little bit in shaky territory. Over the past 2 weeks, he's seen an uptick in targets, but it's barely resulted in production. Now, I will say that with Laser calling the plays, he loves his slot guys. Like, absolutely adores his slot guys. We saw it back with the Dolphins, of course, with Jarvis Landry and how Jarvis Landry took off with Bill Laser calling the plays. So I'm still going to have him in a few lineups. But with Cordell Patterson, who's going to see a ton of workload, I'd rather opt to him where he's only $400 more. Or if you want to opt down and go with a kicker or a defense in this one, I think that you can end up saving, 1K plus and go with the higher end guy at a different position. And honestly, I'm just not in a place where I could see Anthony Miller reeling in, 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards. I'm not like, whoa, doggy, I got to play me some Anthony Miller. That's not what I'm thinking for this matchup. Now, like I said, I'm still going to have him in a few, but when it comes to him being extremely relevant and going to be in every single lineup, he'll probably be in about 20% of my lineups this week. But we did just bring up, Cordell Patterson getting a big workload. And that's what I want to happen, right? And honestly, like this backfield, like Cordell Patterson is the most relevant guy, but there's a lot more than what meets the eye when it comes to this matchup. The Vikings, since moving on from Ngakoue, has actually been one of the worst passing defenses so far. I mean, rush defenses so far, or defenses up against the running back. However, it's mainly been because of the passing game. Now, I do know that factors in with Alvin Kamara being in there. Of course, him with, I believe he had like 96 yards. That's going to be a big time factor and obviously going to knock you down a little bit. But, when we look at it, they've actually needed more pressure up the middle, which means that they're taking guys out of coverage and contain on the outside, which is forcing guys, allowing opportunities for running backs to get to the outside and to get yards and receptions in that area. They've allowed 17 for 133 over the past 2 games, which is where Patterson operates. So I love Cordell Patterson, but I am a little bit concerned that they overuse Patterson and that affects his efficiency, on the outside. This is what I hope happens. This is how the perfect scenario for this game lines up on the Bears side. Nall, right, isn't used as a passing down option like he has been. I mean, they take his 6'2", 240-pound frame, and they use him to get all the goal line carries, right, to get that early down work to try and set Nick Foles up with, 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 3s. Instead, I feel like it's not going to go that way, but that's what I need to happen. Ryan Nall is the perfect candidate for this early down work. So when we sit there and we look at it, Nall gets a touchdown and 80 yards on the ground. Meanwhile, I hope to see Patterson used in the pass game where he can see 80 yards and a touchdown in the air, meanwhile seeing 20 yards or so rushing on the ground. I think that's absolutely perfect, and I think that's a recipe for success for the Bears. The thing is,
is that's not how it happens for Chicago, like ever. That's never how it happens. They always, muddy up the waters. They always make it way more difficult than it needs to be. Hopefully that changes a little bit with Nagy, I guess relinquishing his play calls over to Laser. But yeah, this is probably what's going to happen. Patterson has like 3 receptions for 10 yards with 30 yards on the ground on 15 carries. Nall has like 10 targets with 5 receptions for 40 yards with one rush for 5 yards. Meanwhile, Pierce has like 7 carries for 30 yards, and Lamar Miller comes in this game and has 6 carries for 20 yards and a touchdown, and completely just disintegrates all fantasy value that was there to be had for the Bears on the run game. It's going to be tough to see exactly what happens in this game, but I do know that it's most likely going to be a clusterfuck. So you got to take a chance on Miller as a deep flyer. He is in there for, I believe, 200 or so. And, I'm not saying like, play him in every lineup or anything, but I'm going to have him, in 2 or 3 lineups just to take a shot, just to take a little, shot in the dark, see what happens. Meanwhile, I'll probably have about 30% of my lineups with Nall in it because he's cheap. And honestly, like he could get that goal line work, or at least he should get that goal line work. Meanwhile, Patterson, right? He's going to be my main target, and he's usable in the bonus, by the way. So I'm going to have Patterson in about 40 to 50% of my lineups. When it comes to Nall, though, I do want to bring up Nall because of the fact that he had 25 touchdowns in 21 games during his last 2 seasons in college. Plus, he was used in the receiving game. I believe he did have over 27 receptions, something along those lines, for like 250 yards. So he did get work in the passing game, and he did see those touchdowns, which is huge. So Ryan Nall at the 30% ownership on my side of things could absolutely be a hammer play. And I want 1 lineup, maybe 2, with Nall in that captain or the bonus spot. Now, I do want to hop back onto the receiving game for Chicago because we kind of skipped out on the tight ends, went straight in the running backs with this. And honestly, if the Bears are smart, they're going to learn from the Lions, and they're going to move Jimmy Graham into one-on-one coverage up against Chris Jones. This is what happened to Chris Jones last week with Hawkinson in there, and Hawkinson caught all 3 attempts thrown his way. Do I trust Laser to do that? That's a tough question because Laser's never actually had a tight end over 600 yards in a season when he's been the offensive coordinator. He just doesn't use the tight end a whole lot. He likes his slot wide receivers. He likes to keep the tight end to block, and he likes to use his slot guys. So it's kind of a little bit of a different system compared to what Laser's used in the past when it comes to the amount of tight ends that they use. And honestly, like I actually have to admit this, that I would actually love Graham in this matchup a lot more if Matt Nagy was actually calling the plays. But since Laser's doing it, it makes me a little bit more hesitant to use Jimmy Graham in a bunch of lineups like I would have originally. So I am going to back off the ownership on Graham. He'll probably be in about 20 to 30% of my lineups. Meanwhile, Cole Kmet, he's dealing with an issue. I'm going to fade. I'm going to fade off Kmet just a little bit. Now, I will say that the Vikings are allowing double-digit fantasy points in all but the first game of the season so far, and they've allowed 3 touchdowns in the past 4 games. So, like I said, Graham's going to be in my lineups. I'll have 1 lineup with Cole Kmet, but I need to monitor his injury situation because he could be sitting out in this game. If he's not sitting out, he could be on a snap count. But if he is sitting out, I do want to share at least 1 share of that monster over there in Demetrius Harris, who I absolutely love. The dude's just massive. He has a huge catch radius, and he's the perfect red zone target. I believe Jimmy Graham went out or Cole Kmet went out earlier in the season, and I believe he did end up having a touchdown reception. I have to check back on that. But Demetrius Harris is a guy that I want to play at least in 1 lineup and take a shot on him. Plus, he's super cheap. So now, when we flip sides, right, the tight end position is actually where you should be attacking the Bears. The Bears, 3 straight games with at least 5 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown. Irv Smith, right, is out. He's out of this game. And Conklin has been used as more of like a traditional blocking type tight end. So this is the perfect game for Rudolph to kind of get back up on his horse from what we saw last year and the previous years as well. All 6 of the Bears' touchdowns so far this season allowed to the tight end have come inside the red zone, which is absolutely perfect for Kyle Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph always has each season this like 5 or 6 game stint where he's getting touchdowns and he's getting 60 or 70 yards and he's just destroying the tight end rankings because he wasn't anywhere to be found prior to or even after that little 5 or 6 game stint. This could be the start to that stint. I'm telling you guys, like, it's something as to where Kyle Rudolph will probably be in 2 of my bonus slots just because I don't love this game overall when it comes to high-end fantasy values. And he's cheap, man. He is super cheap, and he makes a lot of these other lineups extremely, I guess, feasible when it comes to playing some of these other studs in this matchup. Now, I will say that his passer, Kirk Cousins over there, has struggled in primetime games at all. But Big Time actually mentioned that earlier, so I went to go look it up. And, he hasn't been absolutely terrible on Thursday nights, but it hasn't been good. Monday nights, not so much better. And I believe early in his career, he struggled a lot more than what he struggled recently. But with that being said, he's still averaging, I believe, less than 2 touchdowns a game, less than 200 or so yards, 250 yards, something along those lines. Anyways, just he's not worth the value of playing if you're going to get that same exact production that he has had in these primetime games. But even the past couple years, right? He's had a few startable weeks up against the Bears, just a few of them. And honestly, I'll say that there's a little bit of hope because of the fact that the Bears don't bring pressure. Like the Bears, they get a little bit of pressure on the quarterback, but they don't blitz a whole lot. They're in the bottom, I believe, 10 teams max, but I want to say close to the bottom 5 teams when it comes to blitzing the quarterback. Meanwhile, Kirk Cousins is 4th in the NFL in clean pocket percentage. Meanwhile, he's 10th in deep ball completion percentage. Now, if Justin Jefferson can get some time, a little bit of wiggle room, and can get downfield up against Jalen Johnson, I'm telling you guys, Justin Jefferson can have a massive game, and we've seen him do it before. Even Thielen could have a couple opportunities, which I like a lot worse, or I like a lot less in this game. But, Justin Jefferson could absolutely be a smash play with Kirk Cousins over there, right along with him. Now, do I think that's likely to happen? No, but this is DFS, guys. We are taking chances. And scared money don't make no money. So Kirk Cousins, with that clean percentage, pocket percentage, when it comes to his completions, I'm telling you guys, Kirk Cousins could actually have a hell of a week this week. Now, with that being said, the Chicago Bears, there are 14th in explosive plays allowed to the wide receiver or to the passing game. So it's not like they're going to give up, 10 plays this game with Justin Jefferson going deep in each one. But it still is possible that Justin Jefferson could have 2 or 3 touchdowns on some 20-plus yard plays. So Justin Jefferson, for me, will be in about 20 to 30% of my lineups. Meanwhile, Thielen up against Kyle Fuller, who's been an absolute shutdown monster. Thielen's probably going to be in close to about 10% of my lineups. Still got to play him, but I don't love him in this matchup. My biggest hope is that he sees Buster Screen in the slot on a few different plays and can break off a big one up against Buster Screen. Now, when it comes to the other receivers, we got Chad Beebe, we got Olabisi Johnson, and honestly, Chad Beebe's snaps have been going up. Meanwhile, BC's snaps have been going way down. And even though Beebe's snaps have been going up, he just hasn't seen the targets. I just don't see it happening. Now, if they opt to go with more 3 wide receiver sets with Irv Smith Jr. being out, sure, Beebe could actually be an option. But me sitting there and looking at it and trying to dissect which direction I want to go with it, if I play Beebe, it's only going to be in the instance that I'm playing a lot of the Chicago Bears, and I assume that the Chicago Bears are actually going to be winning this game. And that they come in the fourth quarter and Beebe sees 4 or 5 receptions in the fourth quarter and ends up getting a touchdown. So Beebe for me isn't going to be oh yeah, you got to get him in there. He'll be in 1 of my lineups, maybe 2 of my lineups, and I'm probably not going to have any shares of Olabisi Johnson. He only has 2 targets so far since Beebe came back from his injury, and he's had 0 targets over the past 3 games. Meanwhile, his snaps have diminished down to 11 snaps, 8 snaps, 5 snaps. He just hasn't seen that workload that a lot of people thought that he might get, especially with Justin Jefferson being a rookie. That's not what's happening. I'm fading Olabisi Johnson hard. I hope you guys don't, buy too much into this chasing the dragon type play with Olabisi Johnson. Now, as for the running backs, Cook is a play. Cook is absolutely a play. I'm not saying don't play Cook. However, I don't think he should be in every single one of your lineups. He's been a monster so far this season, and I'm not denying that. I'm telling you guys, Cook is an absolute monster. But the Bears, right? They've been getting beat in the receiving game up against the running backs, but they've been overall okay when it comes to keeping running backs from gaining massive amounts of yards on the ground. Since week 6, the most amount of yards allowed to the Bears on the ground is 68 by Derrick Henry. And that was on 21 carries, by the way. They faced Alvin Kamara. They faced Mike Davis. They faced Darrell Henderson. They still haven't allowed more than 68 yards on the ground to any one of these running backs. I'll have him, don't get me wrong, Cook, I'll have him in about 80% of my lineups, maybe even 90%. But Keep in mind, he will undoubtedly be the most owned player on this slate. And honestly, it could be a record high this season for being the most owned player on this slate, especially in, high stakes tournaments. Now, if he ends up getting hurt, or let's just say the Bears shut him down, just like they did in 2018 and 2019, you're talking about knocking out probably 80% of the field or more, right? This year does feel different. Dalvin Cook seems like even better than what he was last year. But just keep in mind, in 2018, 2019, he played 3 games up against the Bears. In those games, he rushed for 35 yards, 39 yards, and 12 yards. That is it. That is it. He played at least 79% of the snaps in all 3 of those games. That's a percentage. 79% of the snaps is a percentage that he's only hit twice so far this season. Every other game has been below 79% of the snaps. I'm not saying avoid him, right? But keep in mind that you are going for a $1 million lineup, or you're going for a significant chunk of change. And having Dalvin Cook not in your lineups could end up getting you up to that point, especially at his price. His price is absolutely insane. It's like 13.6. That's over 27 fantasy points in order for it to pay off. The issue, right, isn't the fact that he can get up to 27 fantasy points, because we've seen him do it. He put up 42 and something like 51 the week before that. So he's definitely done that. And he's exceeded, that double up type money. He's actually hit the triple. However, what I'm looking at is the Bears defense, right? Along with his rushing upside and the price, and saying, hey, sure, he gets 27, but would that be worth it when it comes to being able to play other guys? His cost is extremely prohibitive when it comes to playing other studs in this lineup. And honestly, unless you want to play just flyer after flyer and at least 2, maybe even 3 of your slots, you can't play him in the bonus. So when it comes to that aspect of things, right, I like, as a contrarian play, by the way, Cook in the bonus, because it's going to make you play flyers, but you're going to have to get really lucky. But I like him even more by not playing him at all and just trying to get value outside of that, trying to hit the double ups on other guys that don't cost you 13.6K. I mean, that's absolutely insane to me. So with that being said, you do have flyers, right? You have guys like, Ryan Nall that are cheaper. So it can happen. You guys can make it work, but just keep in mind, these studs out here, some of these other studs could absolutely produce at a higher multiplier than what Dalvin Cook can get you. Even a guy like Alexander Madison, who could come in after a long drive where, Dalvin Cook rushes for 3.5 yards per carry, but they keep on getting first down after first down. Meanwhile, he has 10 rushes on a drive. They get into the red zone. All of a sudden, Alexander Madison comes in and pounds one into the end zone. Is that going to be likely to happen? Probably not. But we're playing DFS tournaments, and this type of lineup can win you big, big, big time money. Guys, with that being said, make sure you guys go check out thrivefantasy.com. Once again, that's thrivefantasy.com. Use promo code CIRCLE. They will match whatever you put in there up to $50. You have to put in a minimum of 20, but anything after that, they'll end up matching up to 50. When you guys do that, of course, we get credit over there at Join Our Circle and Fantasy Intervention. So make sure you guys check that out. Once again, that's thrivefantasy.com. Thrivefantasy.com, promo code CIRCLE. Thank you guys for tuning in. Once again. Make sure you guys check out our show tonight at 8 o'clock. It's going to be absolutely insane. I'm extremely, extremely excited for it. Thank you all for tuning in. Once again, we will answer your questions later. And thank you guys for letting us intervene with your fantasy football life. We're out.